Hey everyone, good afternoon. This is Lane with Adaptive Medical Partners again. Hope you're doing well. And whether we like it or not, we have all been thrust into the world of virtual interviewing right now. So over the past week or so, my team has had a lot of time to gather some very good feedback about some of these first go-round experiences for various facilities and candidates. The mixture of good and not so good feedback is what's prompted me to maybe share just some basic information with you today. But before I dive into some of these practical tips, one thing I wanted to share across the board is whether you're a facility interviewing a candidate or whether you're a physician interviewing with a physician, make sure to take a little bit of empathy and grace into the overall experience, because what we don't recognize is that both parties, or one in particular, may be brand new to this concept of virtual interviewing, if you will. So keep that in mind as we kind of roll right into some of these tips. So starting pretty basic here with some of the setup information. So before the interview actually begins, I want you to take a look at some of these basic following examples. The first and foremost is check your camera. So whatever device you're using, whether it be your phone, an iPad, a laptop, make sure that the screen is clear. Any good photographer will tell you the first thing they check when they're getting their camera ready for a shoot is they're looking to make sure the lens is clear and clean of any debris. That's just going to hopefully avoid any sort of blurriness and also maybe a distraction point for the other viewing party, and it may take away from some of the quality of the interview itself. Second thing you should do with the camera is make sure that it's at eye level and at arm's length. So as you can tell here, I'm just over arm's length, and the reason to have it at eye level is somewhat self-explanatory, but it is also admittedly to allow your eyes to hopefully gravitate naturally back to the camera lens. Reason being, we all have a tendency, as you've probably noticed, to kind of stare at our own screen or to be distracted by something else happening around us off screen. And that's a very easy way to unintentionally either offend or possibly simply detract from the positivity that you may be building on this virtual site visit. So make sure that you're making a lot of good eye contact and not to have any distractions around you as well. If you have an older computer or device that you're utilizing, certainly look at maybe having a wired headset, as you may be able to avoid any sort of connectivity or lag issues between your headset, microphone, or the computer itself. It's also going to more than likely improve the overall audio quality that you're providing as well as receiving. So jokingly, I know it may seem like you could look like a sportscaster announcer for football by having a headset with a microphone built in, but you'd be surprised at how much better the audio is going to be for your audience on the other side. So those are just a few quick things to do before the interview begins. One other piece I would mention as well is before you start, sit down in place just like this and just relax for a few minutes. Let some of the jitters subside. Maybe make sure that you've got some of those last things that you need by you in case either, for example, you need a glass of water. That's always a key one. Or, of course, having a notepad and a writing utensil. If you have any notes, perhaps, or questions, even better, for the interview that's taking place, make sure you have those with you, because stepping away from the camera for just a second to run into the other room, it's probably going to happen, and we are human, so it's natural for something like that to maybe occur unintentionally. But if you can avoid it, I'd encourage you to take a few minutes just to sit down and again give yourself the ability to just kind of settle in before the interview begins. After that, if there are multiple people on the interview, specifically talking to those on the hospital side, make sure before you guys get into the meat and potatoes of the interview that you actually introduce everyone that is participating on the call. So go around the room, again, something pretty self-explanatory, but I've already seen a few of those where nobody was really sure when to jump in and introduce themselves. So what may work well for a lot of facilities is for one person to simply introduce everybody sitting around the table to the candidate on the other side of the desk. Don't look away when the other person's talking, even if there's a question or you've got a coworker that's trying to catch your attention. It's very distracting, and it can cause the person you're speaking to either lose interest or simply lose their place or lose their train of thought. And again, knowing that a lot of communication, if not predominant amount, is based off of nonverbal, you need to make sure that you're giving as much of the nonverbal attention to your audience on the other side. Make sure that when people are finished talking that you maybe give just that one little bit of extra pause to make sure that they are finished. Where I've already seen this come into effect was when there was a bit of a delay in the connectivity, I think, on the candidate side. And luckily, we picked up on it pretty quick, and we were able to give just a few extra seconds pause to make sure that his responses were finished before somebody else either went on with their conversation or maybe their question line. So following up with that, a few things I'd maybe mention very quickly as far as after the interview. Make sure that you ask how the interview went. I don't think there's any harm in doing so on the interview itself, because let's face it, this is a new and sometimes daunting task that people in real time are going to appreciate the genuineness of you asking for immediate feedback on how did things go. Could you hear me that well? Is my back setting okay? Could you hear us that well? You know, especially from a hospital standpoint. If a candidate's able to give you honest feedback right then and there about how the actual conducting of the interview went, how the flow of it went, how the length of it was it too long? I've seen one hospital in particular already do kind of a 2-day interview of sorts, broken up into several 1 to 2 hour chunks. And it actually worked quite well because they gave 15-minute breaks between each of those 45-minute conversations with various people so that the candidate interviewing had time to either go to the restroom, maybe just simply relax for a minute, gather their thoughts before they spoke to the next physician or C-level member, or maybe it was just to allow them to, again, go to the restroom or what have you. So there's been a lot of ways we've already seen these virtual interviews conducted, but again, making sure that you get and give some good feedback to make sure that the next time around it's even better. Be clear about next steps. That's really probably the key thing here, is to have some sort of call to action. Hey, we appreciate you, Dr. Smith, coming on the call today. We really enjoyed the time and getting to know you, and here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to have, and then let them know exactly what to expect, because you're setting the expectation for them. And that way, if you know on your side you need a day or two to gather feedback or to maybe discuss about whether there needs to be an offer made or perhaps a second virtual visit with another physician, whatever the process is, make sure that the candidate knows exactly what is going to happen. If you are recording your interviews to share with colleagues or others within your facility, maybe other physicians that simply could not attend the call, that's okay. Just please make sure that you acknowledge that and inform your audience that you are doing so. Also, think about that when you are sharing it, in case there's any pauses at the end or beginning that you may simply want to edit out so it is a little cleaner when you send that file to somebody else. Remember to show some grace, like I mentioned early on. We are human. People are working from home right now, so there is a very good possibility that you'll occasionally see the 6-year-old run past you, or maybe a dog starts barking on their end. Those things are going to happen and probably add a little bit of levity to the overall conversation and make things a little more lighthearted, but just be patient. We're all working through this and learning as we go. So those are just a quick few tips that hopefully come in handy as you guys begin conducting more of these virtual tours. And I will certainly continue to let you guys know what other feedback and advice we are getting as we continue moving into this virtual age. So thank you for your time today. Good luck with your virtual interviews, and we'll see you next week.